Hey guys, on this episode of EdTech, we're going to have Gina Sansevero and Jason Taylor. We're going to be talking about globalized integrators, AV, how this responds to educational bids, as well as the new features of Dante. All this and more on EdTech.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is EdTech, episode 76, Globalization, AV, and Education.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Atlas IED, innovative audio solutions for every business environment.
This is EdTech, the monthly higher ed tech podcast. This month, I am joined by Gina Sansevero from Atlas IED. How are you, Gina?
I'm doing very well, Bill. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, not a problem. And as well from Drexel, we have Jason Taylor. How are you, sir?
I'm fairly well. The air conditioning seems to not be working so well today in the building, but I'll get through it.
There you have it, folks. We're already on a timer. The moment the sun goes up, we're going to start turning into a convection oven for him. First and foremost, it is almost, for us, it is, as I put it, it's the summer's almost coming to an end. And if you're in education, this honestly feels like the Sunday before the school week starts and everything. So for a lot of us, we're probably wrapping up projects. Or if you're like me, who is currently in the midst of trying to get a dorm finished. So that's always fun times. In any event, the first quick thing I'll ask, at least with Jason, with you guys, are you guys, I was going to say, how are the projects wrapping up with you guys at Drexel right now?
Okay. We're still kind of slow going on bigger projects. And I think that I've convinced people that the big project is not going to happen until winter. So that's sort of a step back hurdle, I guess. I don't know how you...
Okay.
Does that include any classrooms?
Classrooms are a lot of the smaller classrooms we do in-house, so that's not really an issue. This particular project is a very large forward-facing lecture hall that also has significant lighting issues. And so I'm actually in a weird position where I'm the AV guy, but I'm more advocating for the lighting situation and letting other people take care of the AV side of it because I'm more concerned about the lighting.
Now, here's the other question I have for you on this one, and that is, as you're saying, like letting other folks take care of it, would this be more of contract this out to another company, or would this be one of those just, eventually we'll get to it kind of thing? Well,
I guess it's a little bit of both of those, because here we have, like, my AV domain is classrooms, general use classrooms. And then there's event services, and they'll use that room as well for large events. So they get their say. And then Rob's group, VCAP, also will use the room for video conferencing and, recording, big lectures and stuff. So they have their say. So I kind of let those two groups battle it out on the AV side, because really when it comes down to it, all I need is a place to plug in a laptop and, to get it up on the projector and a functional microphone. So all of the bells and whistles don't really concern
me. So the reason I asked that, and this actually gets into our first article of the day, which comes to us via Commercial Integrator, in which it talks about the global demand for AV. Now, how this relates back to everything with this one is when it comes to contracting out or, doing stuff out of house, because, there's been multiple talks on this podcast about whether or not you do stuff in-house or whether you do it out of, contract it out and everything. There is this turn in which, if you haven't seen it and everything, you now have two of the, we're starting to get more of the larger AV companies all kind of merging together. If you haven't been around, AVI SPL and Diversified have kind of become the two local, kind of behemoths in the realm. And the thing is, and I've kind of noticed this, when we go to bid out certain projects and everything, in our case, it was we did a renovations on 2 buildings, and it was about 24 classrooms, which, in the time given and everything, would take us forever. So we contracted it out, and you laugh, but it's one of those, there are certain things.
Oh, no, I know. I feel your pain.
Oh, yeah. Well, in this case, it's, could we do it ourselves? Yes. Do I have my electrician's A card? Not a chance. Right. So when we go to contract these things out, it is kind of interesting to note who responds, how they respond, and who specifically bids on it. For us, it's been a number of local competitors, local integrators, and then every now and then, we get 1 or 2 from either Diversified or AVI SPL, which I found out an interesting thing. It's almost like they're more like a McDonald's franchise in that, there's the AVI SPL office that's in New York, and then there's the AVI SPL office in Philly. And only once did I ever see that, all of a sudden I got 2 bids from AVI SPL, and I went, and I'm like, oh, it's 2 different offices. All right, this suddenly makes sense.
And 2 different prices.
Yes.
That's interesting.
To make life easier on both of them, not all of them had all of their legality paperwork filled out. So it was one of those just, A for effort, not so much. But, listen, once again, the folks, mean very well and they try very hard and everything else. So I'm not gonna say they didn't follow through. It was just state contract paperwork can be a pain, and that's all I'm going to say about it. So Jason, on your side, how do you guys tend to view it? Do you see, more regional integrators? Do you see the mom and pop shops? And, kind of going from there, who tends to be, how do you factor it all out?
We definitely see both smaller companies and larger, global type companies. In my experience, the local companies are more hungry. They tend to respond faster. And when it comes down to the bottom line, they tend to have lower bids. Mm-hmm. So we often will go with the smaller local companies pretty much for that reason. I mean, I kind of hate to say it, but Drexel is very often like, we just go straight for the low bid without any, and that's bid us before, so I try not to let that happen too much. But honestly, the small company that we've been doing installations lately, they're great. They get back to me faster than anybody else. Mm-hmm. I have the. Do
you ever have any major pushback or anything?
No. I mean, again, because they're the low bidders, so everybody loves them.
So with the consolidation of all of these integrators in the industry, do you find that it's going to be harder and harder for you to maintain that relationship with the smaller companies?
I don't think so. I think there's going to be a place for them. I think if we had a more global presence, it would be more of an issue, or if we needed to do more stuff overseas or even, on a larger national scale, it would come into play. But so far it's been the local guys are winning for me.
So on our end, it's the same kind of deal. The local folks have been very quick to respond, and only once or twice have we ever had some folks where they looked at the contract clause and they said, "Oh, but what about this?" And I'm going, if you guys are, there are certain things where we asked for DM certifications and HD-based-T certifications. And I'll just keep it to this. When a company gripes about an HD-based-T certification, it tends to put up a red flag for me. But in general, most of the times, we've developed a relationship enough where it's like, oh yeah, no guys, you need to have this, this, and this. I go, oh, all right, no problem, and they follow through, no qualms. And for them, it is, I'm not going to ever say that William Patterson, no, we're a big powerhouse when it comes to, buying AV or anything like that. No, believe me. Listen, right up to a couple towns up from me is, where KPMG has a lot of their consolidated ops. Believe me, they will drop far more money in probably 1 week than I'll probably do in a year. So of course, the bigger fish are going to go after that and the bigger integrators. But it's not to say that we don't matter. If you look at the statistics and everything, the amount of money that gets poured into higher ed AV, has been growing steadily year by year and everything. At the same time, if you also look at it, some of the schools are also going overseas, so it kind of goes hand in hand, that one. That aside, Gina, the other thing I'm going to ask you from a manufacturer's perspective, by the way, if you're not familiar, Gina is and correct me if I'm wrong here, Gina, it's VP of Marketing and Communications?
Yep, and corporate communications. Mm-hmm.
Oh, there we go. Over at Atlas IED. So it's one of the, and how long have you been over there now?
9 months.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So if you're not familiar, Atlas does a wide range of products. As of late, I know their big push has been going into more of the communication, mass notification, things like that. A lot of odds and ends. But that aside, I'm going to ask, when it comes to some of the larger manufacturers and larger integrators and things like that, have you noticed that there's a trend of them kind of going, yeah, we want like a whole turnkey solution, or is it just one of those, they're all kind of, they're all, the bigger fish are growing up. They're just kind of growing kind of deal.
So for sure, from a manufacturer standpoint, there's a number of challenges that come with integrators becoming global integrators. Mm-hmm. Very often, schools, and you guys probably know this just from your dealings, schools that have remote locations, especially overseas, still want to have some sort of say in the standards that are going into the buildings over there, so that if there is any opportunity for remote monitoring and troubleshooting, you have that. Well, overseas, very often there are different certifications for your products that are necessary, whether it's on the electrical certification side or, their UL isn't called UL. They have different requirements for life safety products and things like that. So it does pose a little bit of a challenge when you're trying to address a global integrator, but helping them to create standards. So we definitely have to work a little bit harder at getting the certifications globally that are required of our products to make sure that we can address those needs.
You mean you don't put everything in a EU junction box and just call it close enough
and have fun? No.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one thing I have, like, if you go overseas kind of thing, depending on the country, once again, there are some times where you look and you kind of become grateful of things. Mine was U.S. building code, mostly because in certain cases the junction boxes, it tends to be a lot more standardized in the EU market. And for us, we tend to look at that and go, that's a two gang box. They're like, yeah, no, for us, it's just a single gang. Here you go. And God help you if we start getting into the metric versus imperial. But
but all of that absolutely plays a part, right? I mean, their ceiling tiles are a different size. And so when we are talking about creating speakers that go into a 1x2 ceiling tile or a 2x2 ceiling tile, that doesn't work over there. So little things like that have to be re-engineered. And believe me, our engineers are fantastic at it. They know when they're during the product development phase, if we're going to address to market this as a global product, that they need to address these things. But heck yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you don't think about.
Yeah. It's one of those things of is globalization happening? Yes. In the sum up of it, it all just kind of depends on how for me, I view it as how do you actually do the relationship management? Because, once again, literally I'm probably about like maybe half an hour down the way from Diversified Systems. However, they have done some stuff at the school. And I'll just keep it to that. And we tend to stick with the local integrators for various reasons because of that. Anyways, but once again, it all depends on who you're comfortable with. If you're, say, I'm going to say like NYU or something like that. Yeah, if that's the case, as I say, it probably makes more sense that you have someone like Diversified or Whitlock or something like that. Why? Because they can get folks who are going to take care of, your Abu Dhabi office or your satellite campus in Doha or something like that. Because yes, they have folks who can go out there, or at least they have partnerships, or the franchise or something like that. It's one of those. How big of a scale are you looking at? That's my little bit on that one. Moving on, the next article we have is comes to us from actually through AVNation ourselves, but it's about Audinate and how they released the Dante AV module, which if you look at it, and if you've been watching how Dante's been kind of expanding and growing and everything like that, it's a bit of an interesting expansion. Specifically, before it used to be, you have your Dante expansion bus, and most of your DSPs can handle that, no problem. Here you go. They've kind of, a lot of them have kind of moved over from the proprietary expansion bus to Dante and everything. But now with this one, it's they're really starting to get into the realm of adding as they put it, AV over IP, and now this one also adds in telephony. So it's one of those things, and I'll just we'll go back and forth on the manufacturer and the end user here. Jason, I'll ask you first and foremost, how much actual audio conferencing do you guys do? I'm sure Rob and his guys do a fair share and everything, but the bigger question is, are they going to look at that and go, and we already have our own hardware with this, or is it one of those they'll look and say, oh, that's interesting? So I'm just getting the end user perspective on this one first.
This would definitely be a better question for Rob, because I do very little video conferencing. But yeah, I would say, to me, it's kind of like, why hasn't this already happened? It seems like a no-brainer. It's like this. I don't feel like it's something to be bragging about right now. It's like it's a thing that's out there already. But
it's fine. It's one of those things where I look at it, and this is just we're gonna throw spaghetti against the wall here and everything. I'm kind of curious as to whether or not this is gonna be one of those things like down the line, whether or not you're gonna have to do more. If this is gonna be a new chipset, or if this is just simply more software integration. My money says it's a new. It'll probably eventually end up being a new chipset and everything. But it'll be interesting. How this all kind of hodgepodges together. Cool. I would definitely say no. It's think of it this way. If you have someone who actually understands how Dante Domain Manager works and everything, and they're actually pretty good at DSP programming, okay, it's another tool in the arsenal and everything. Yeah. The downside of it that I can see, and once again, this is on the end user side, I look at this as cool. We can do this. And Jason, I'll throw this to you. I'll ask you this because I look at it and go great, and then I realize, the implementation of this. Say hypothetically, you could go and say, hey, we can actually put audio conferencing in just about every classroom that we have Dante in. My brain would go, cool. The other part of my brain would then suddenly go and say, wait a minute, how do we make sure so that you don't get robocalls and everyone starts, kind of going, I'm getting random calls in the middle of my middle of my class. How do we get this to stop?
And that's the problem is, I'm not really the end user. The professor in the classroom is the end user. And is that person going to be able to, facilitate the whole Dante situation in the room? And if there is a problem, like you're saying, they're not going to necessarily be able to fix that on their own.
No, the other end I'll also say is this, and it's really more of one of those, how do you present it to, and this is the other thing I'm going to, it kind of comes up, is that's cool. How do you actually implement this?
Right.
And that, I'll actually, this is where I'll actually go with you on this. When, Jason, when you have a new product or a new implement, like a new, say there's something where it's like, oh, look here, we actually have gone and made it where you can actually access the touch panel on the computer screen. Like some schools do this. At Rutgers, they have a Python programmer who, they have a touch, they actually have a touch monitor, and you can control the whole room off the PC and everything. Cool. The bigger question I have is then, how do you actually get folks to adopt this and this and that? It's one of those, like, this is a new feature. Okay. So Jason, like, how often do you guys tend to update, the faculty about new products, or is it more of you guys are more on like the maintenance end?
Yeah, we're more on the maintenance end, and I'm very hesitant to go too deep into new features because honestly, I find a lot of professors aren't interested. We had a the Samsung Flip demo here for a little while, and there was a professor in the classroom using the whiteboard, and after her class, I was like, "Hey, can I show you how to use this? This Flip. It's very similar to the whiteboard. It's just as reactive. It has a lot of extra features." And she just kind of looked at me. He's like, "I like using the whiteboard." And I'm just like, "Oh, okay." I can't force technology on people.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things of, once again, and by no means am I like throwing cold water on this or anything. It's some of the stuff is very cool, and I will admit up front, I think it's great. But it's how I think it's one of those things where it is kind of a responsibility on us as far as how do we view this and how is this advantageous to us? Yeah. Because, perfect example is this. We actually just recently, we were dealing with some folks with our hospitality people and everything, and they had gotten a Solstice pod, which, if you've played around with collaboration pods and everything, and collaboration hardware, collaboration software, what have you, it's very cool. Well, these guys had gone and just bought it, and the integrator never bothered to contact us about it. And so when they tried to hook everything up, they didn't bother to hook it up to our network. They just went and used the wireless. They just used the pod as its own wireless access point, and that's it. And everyone went, "Oh, this thing sucks." And I went, "Guys, you do realize, like, if you talk with us and work with us, like, we can get it put on the network. You can get all the wireless access, and you don't have to, be isolated to just yourself." And they went, "Oh." And then once they realized, like, wait a minute, I can do a presentation off my iPad? I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "We can walk around and do this, and I can still check my email?" I'm like, "Yeah."
That's the point.
So it's, once again, this is one of those bits of, it's an interesting new feature with Dante. Do I think it's cool? Yes. Do I think it definitely needs a little bit more integration? And by that, I mean, it'll be cool once I actually go and say, you have the software dialer. Like, once you can have someone do that remotely, I can see folks like, with Rob's group going, "Oh yeah, cool. Oh, we can bring someone in via this. That's cool."
Is it a new? I guess I'm still trying to wrap my head around it a bit. And obviously manufacturers have to adopt it for it to even get to the point where you're going to be using it. But is it allowing for new features that will absolutely change the interface for the end user, for the professor, for the faculty, for the staff? Or is this just a piece of a puzzle that's going to make your life easier as a designer, installer, and maintainer?
I think it's on the installer. I think it's on the installer end.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. So this might not even affect the feature benefit that your end user would see.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, Jan, is that, and I'll just ask this as a general question. As a manufacturer, when you guys see, like, open standards like this and everything, do you guys go, "Okay, cool," or is it really more of you tend to look at, like, for example, if you look at Clear One or you look at BSS or a couple other ones, I know these are all like taboo, forbidden words, but they all have their own expansion, kind of proprietary expansion bus. As a manufacturer, when you guys look at, like, is it more open standards makes things easier, or is it more along the lines of, it's easier if we just do our own proprietary stuff, and, "Oh, you want to do this too? Oh, well, here, we'll shift things over."
I don't think it's about ease. What we look at is, how does this fit into our long-term product development strategy and where we want to take the company? And so we develop those products and whether it's software or hardware, based on our strategy, whether it's, you know, the 3-year, 5-year, 10-year strategy. We are moving in a direction, and so that's how we make a decision about what we're going to use, what we're going to develop. Now, from a strategy standpoint, Atlas is very big on right now. Very big on non-proprietary, on kind of open architecture, so that we do play nice with others, so that we are able to, we're a full systems solution provider, right? We do audio communications from endpoint to head end and everything in between. However, if you don't want to use an Atlas product for a specific part of that system, we're okay with that. And so we'll make it easier for you to be able to include our product and somebody else's product and have it speak nicely to each other. And that's part of our strategy, part of our values, actually. As a company, we just revised our values. And one of the values that we have is making our customers' lives easier. So we want to be that company that allows somebody to say, oh gosh, that was so easy. Thanks so much.
See, and that is one of those things where it is kind of a change. Like if you look at certain manufacturers, and Jason, you know, you and I can both look at this on our end, without going into specific details, certain manufacturers do tend from time to time kind of go, okay, what will it take for you to make this all our playground? And they always try to make like a sweetheart deal and everything. But as I've said in the past, and you know, Gina's probably heard me say this a billion times, so one more is not going to kill you. There are certain, like every manufacturer has a product where you look and you go and say, oh yeah, that thing was bulletproof. That was awesome. And there's some other stuff where you look and you go, that needs to go back into the lab. That one, like, you know, that's true. Listen, it happens
to everybody.
Yeah. And, you know, as I say, believe me, every now and then there's been some stuff where I initially said, this is awesome. And then after actual implementation and use, I went, well, I was smoking crack.
Or theoretically, this was supposed to be awesome.
Yeah.
In practice, not so much.
Legendary. But like I said, it's good to see though, from at least from a manufacturer standpoint of like here, like, you know, we all do our things, but being able to kind of be more open on the interoperability scale is a bit, I think, what's best for everyone.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's about all the time we have. Gina, where can the fine folks find you at?
I am on Twitter at Gina Sands or at Atlas_IED or Gina.Sansevero at AtlasIED.com. Come and find me.
Fair enough. Jason, where can the fine folks find you at?
As always, Drexel.edu, and I'm also back on Twitter at Jason, Gaeson.
Oh, there you go. You can find me on LinkedIn, and that's about it. I try to tend to limit my my Twitter following. Anyways, that has been it. Once again, this is EdTech, part of the AVNation podcast family. We will see you guys all next week. Once again, this is EdTech.